Heavy is the head that wears the crown. The year is 1999 and the Baleno moniker first makes its debut in India. Even though it initially began its life as a sedan, by the time it was 2015, the Baleno was back, but as a hatchback. Even though it was down on length, somehow it was still longer in terms of wheelbase. Upon its launch, the Baleno was an instant success and managed to outsell any competitors or lookalikes that posed a threat. However, it left a lot to be desired. If only the safety was as high as the sales figures and the build quality as tempting as the price, we wouldn't be doing this review this soon. But alas, the competition caught up and gave the Baleno a run for its money. Ironically, after all that running, the Baleno was put on 55 kilos of weight. Armed with flamboyant new tech and dashing looks, is the Baleno ready to take the fight to its competitors? Let's find out. Changes are pretty obvious, and despite having the same overall shape, the new Baleno looks a lot more upmarket than the previous one. The LED DRL design really stands out and is quite bright for a DRL. These two headlamps are connected with a rather long chrome strip that runs from one headlamp, crosses over the grille and goes all the way to the other. It's a very smart integration and looks rich. What is an obvious miss here is the addition of LED indicators. I mean, come on Maruti, you've come this far, you may as well go all the way. The Baleno also gets a new wheel design, and though all other trims get 15-inch alloy wheels, this top-spec Alpha variant gets 16-inch precision-cut wheels. Personally, all of this chrome isn't up to my taste, and hopefully Maruti will launch a sportier, de-chromed variant in the future. All variants apart from the Alpha variant get 15-inch wheels. They vary though. For example, the Sigma has steel wheels, whereas the Delta has steel wheels with wheel caps on them. When you go up to the Zeta, you get alloy wheels, but they're 15 inches. On the new Baleno, you get a rather familiar 1.2-litre dual-jet petrol motor that produces 89 bhp of power and 113 Nm of torque. At the rear, you have a newly designed bumper along with a set of LED tail lamps that come standard across all variants and follow the tri-beam aesthetic from the DRLs in the front. All in all, the new Baleno looks really handsome on the outside, and I can imagine this turning a lot of heads, especially from old Baleno owners. The slight weight increase is thanks to the new high-strength steel that Maruti has added in order to add some density to this car. This top-spec Alpha trim gets ESP, EBD, hail hole assist and 6 airbags as standard. It's the interior of the Baleno that's seen the most significant change over here. I mean, the first thing you notice is this new leather-wrapped steering wheel that's also a flat bottom wheel. It feels quite sporty and it's nice to hold. When you look past it, you notice, I think, one of the most remarkable features this car has. It's the heads-up display, which is something that you don't even see a couple of segments above. Another new change that will be much appreciated is the extendable armrest. It's something previous owners complained about quite a lot, and as you can tell, Maruti has been listening. Another really cool feature that's not seen a couple of segments above is the new 360-degree camera. As cool as this feature is, I found it to be a little more of a gimmick. Given the car's short footprint, I don't think it was something that was truly needed. But it's something you can have, and it's only available on the top spec variant. So is the heads-up display. Another feature that isn't a gimmick though is the new cruise control, which I think Baleno owners will appreciate quite a lot, especially on their long road trips. I quite like the new dual-tone layout. The blue and black combination look quite upmarket, though overall fit and finish could have been slightly better. I also hope that Maruti would add a sunroof, but you know, it's something that we may or may not have to wait for, and we may or may not see in the future. I did ask Maruti why they haven't added a sunroof, and what they said did make a lot of sense. They said that it would cost quite a lot, and they would rather spend that money on the heads-up display and the 360 camera, which customers will use a lot more often than the sunroof, which I think is justifiable. Now, the backseat space isn't exactly a place most Baleno owners will find themselves, but In regards to your family and friends, it is quite a comfortable space. Legroom on offer is pretty good. Headroom could have been better. I think anyone above 6 feet would struggle. Maruti has added a few more things to make the cabin a little more comfortable in the back. For starters, they've changed the cushioning of the seats, and let me tell you, it is a lot more comfortable. Now, Maruti could have added a rear armrest, but honestly, I'm just nitpicking. I don't think most people will complain about it. They've added rear AC vents, they've added 2 charging sockets, and now all models across all variants get powered windows as standard. No longer can you have the Baleno with a CVT. Instead, you're stuck with an AMT or a manual. And if you're an enthusiast, I can already tell you the manual should probably be your choice, because this AMT is rather lousy at switching gears. It takes its own sweet time, it's never really sure what gear it needs to be, and if and when it does change gears, it gives you like this weird rubber band effect and you just move back and forth in your seat. It's not a very comfortable feeling. Maybe you won't care, but I think most people will notice and wouldn't prefer something like this. I hope Maruti would have tuned this gearbox slightly better, because this engine definitely has potential, but the gearbox, not so much. I really like the new 9-inch touchscreen. It's very crisp, it's very clear, and it's quite responsive. However, it's limited only to the Alpha variant. If you go for the Delta or the Zeta variant, you'll get a smaller 7-inch touchscreen, which does the job. I mean, you can't really complain. Let's talk about the gauge cluster and the instrument cluster. So the gauges are quite clear, they're quite easy to read, though you won't be looking at them that often because of the heads-up display. You know, it's just easier to not take your eyes off the road. The display in the center can be toggled. It has different modes. It can show you different things. Like for example, right now it's trying to show me the G's that I'm pulling around turns, which aren't a lot. You can toggle through it. It can tell you your power and torque, your acceleration and braking, your efficiency figures, or you could turn off the display altogether. What bothers me is that to access the display, you have to put your hand behind the steering wheel, whereas there's empty buttons right here on the steering wheel that Maruti could have utilized instead. So, you know, it's okay. I guess you win some and you lose some. Performance from this engine is actually quite nice. Every once in a while, you have to jerk the gearbox to get the job done. You know, like either you slot it into manual mode, which I have discovered is the best way to go about dealing with this AMT. However, once you put your foot down, it gets rather audible in here. And it's only then when the NVH levels are not up to the mark. But if you drive it in a sedate fashion, the car is rather quiet, it's comfortable, and the ride quality is quite supple. I really like what Maruti have done with the new seats. They've made it really soft and they actually hug you quite well. So I'm pretty happy with the seats. I do feel like maybe the cabin insulation could have been slightly better, but it's okay, I'm nitpicking. I feel like at this price point, Maruti has already equipped the car with quite a lot, and I guess this gives them something to look forward to in the future. Maruti has given this car new suspension and slightly bigger brakes. The disc on this car is now bigger by 1 inch. It was 13 inches earlier, now it's 14 inches. Since we've come across some rather broken roads, I think this would be a good opportunity to talk about the ride, handling and the NVH. So let's start with the ride. The car actually rides quite well for the most part. It's only when you're going really fast over sharp bumps that you actually feel them creep into the cabin. But if you maintain low city speeds over these kind of roads, yeah, not really that much of a problem. The steering can be a little lazy. The car understeers. It's not as responsive as you'd want it to be, but it's okay. This isn't exactly an enthusiast's wet dream, so I'm not going to hold that against it. NVH levels are actually decent. They could have been better. Not only do you creep in some road noise every now and then, it's also the engine in general that gets a little too audible once you start ringing it. Also, I keep hearing some weird creaking noise coming from that corner of the car, which I'm not sure if it's limited to just this car or if it's just everyone. I guess I'll have to go and talk to other journalists to find out. But for now, that's one thing that's bothering me. But otherwise, it's a comfortable car, and for the purpose it's made, which is to largely commute inside the city, I think it'll do just fine. Oh, we finally hit some open road. I think it's a good opportunity to put my foot down. and let you know just how audible this engine gets. Can you hear that? The engine doesn't sound very happy. It doesn't sound happy to be doing these speeds, and it doesn't sound happy to be ringed. So I guess, the engine is best driven in a rather sedate fashion. I mean, look at the efficiency I'm getting. If I've been driving like an enthusiast, I get 14.1 or like about 12. But if I drive in a calm, sedate, lazy manner, then I'm pretty sure you could get up to 20, maybe if you're lucky, maybe. But I would say ideally at least 18. Maruti claims that you can get up to 22 kilometers per liter with the manual, and about 22, almost 23 kilometers per liter with this AMT. And I can guess why, because this AMT is lazy as hell. Another thing worth mentioning is that this car has new suspension and slightly bigger brakes. Maruti has also altered the dimensions, but it's so negligible you'd hardly notice. Like for example, they've reduced the overall ride height by 5 millimeters, but not the ground clearance. The ground clearance remains the same as before. The dimensions have been changed, but it's honestly in like the single digit millimeters, something you would never really notice. The new suspension, it's compliant, it does a good job. However, it's not exactly the enthusiast choice, and I get why. It's because it's meant to do city duty and maybe sometimes highway duty, as opposed to just being a canyon carver, so to say. Currently, I'm driving in broad daylight, which is why the heads-up display isn't as bothersome. But when you're driving at night or early in the morning, I wish Maruti would have allowed you to reduce the brightness of the heads-up display, because it can be quite distracting. Imagine waking up in the morning and you got this bright screen in your face. Ugh, really annoying. It can actually be quite distracting, and that's kind of counterproductive, right? I mean, its whole purpose is so that you're not distracted and you can keep your eyes on the road. But if this thing is right in your face and it's so bright that you can barely keep your eyes on the road, I mean, come on. I mean, Maruti, like one option to reduce the brightness slightly, that would have been nice. This manual variant is an obvious choice for any enthusiast and shifts in a lot more spirited manner compared to this rather lazy AMT. Now, the price difference between the manual and the AMT variant can be up to 50,000 rupees. In comparison, if there was a CVT variant, the price difference would be up to 1,50,000 rupees. I don't think most people are going to care as much and would prefer to save a lakh than to have a CVT gearbox. Starting at an ex-showroom price of 6.35 lakhs for the base Sigma variant and going up all the way to 9.5 lakhs for this top-of-the-line Alpha trim, the Baleno makes a very compelling proposition. Sure, the competition has moved forward, but so has the Baleno. It introduces some segment-first features and features that have not even been seen a couple of segments above. All in all, I would say that the Baleno is quite a package and would attract masses like it always has. The real question is, how does it really stack up against all of its competitors? I suppose you'd have to wait in the future when we actually get the chance to compare the Baleno to its competitors. But until then, I would say that the Baleno is a solid proposition. And even though some of the features that have made its way now could have been added earlier, I say it's better late than never.